Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining. It's exciting. It's my favorite day of the week. We call it Tito's Tuesday in honor of our guest speaker who's on tonight, Peter Greenlaw, who discovered this medical syndrome. And before we get going any further, I just want to do a disclaimer that tonight is really for education and informational purposes only, and we're not intending any medical advice or intention. We're not diagnosing. We're not doing anything like that. It's just strictly for your information and education. Okay. So thank you so much for joining. We're super excited to just have everybody come on and just listen to this incredible information that Peter's going to share with us tonight. We really wanted to zone it in a little bit and really talk around intermittent nutritional fasting. And I'm just going to share a really quick story. I'll just get whoever's got that background noise. Can everybody just mute their microphones, please? So I'll just quickly share my story and how Peter plays a large role in that, and how every single person that is on this call tonight, you are going to have a transformation based on the information that you're going to hear tonight. Either you've had a transformation, you're in transformation, or you are about to have one, and it's just going to keep going. I met Peter a couple years ago on a business call, and he really spoke life into me. He really helped me see the light around intermittent nutritional fasting and really helped me understand the differences between all the different kinds of fasting there is out there. You guys, there's a lot of confusion out there in the world right now, or in the market or online, that you see around intermittent fasting and intermittent nutritional fasting. Would you agree? Nod your heads if you do. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay the law down tonight, and Peter's going to really help us understand the differences and help you really get informed about why this is such a game changer for optimizing your maximum life potential. And so 2 years ago when I met Peter, he really gave me permission to do this kind of more consistently than I was doing. And I think that's kind of one of the key things too, is the consistency part. But he really did. He gave me permission. And it's not like he said, I give you permission, Sandra, but he really just helped pave the pathway. And um, I felt a little bit more supported, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I did it more often, and I did it really consistently. And I had this incredible health shift. And as a result of that, I was able to really help other people, give them permission to be able to do what it is we're going to talk about tonight. And there was a lot of confusion around it as well. But before I go any further, I'm going to pass it over to Nicole, because Nicole's known Peter for a really long time, and she's just going to introduce him, give him a really great introduction so that you really do pay attention to what he's saying, because as a result of the information you hear tonight, lives are going to be changed. I can guarantee that. So go ahead, Nicole.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Sandra. And it's with great honor that, Peter has been a longtime friend and colleague. And I remember, whoop, somebody's phone is got some noise, background noise. Please be sure and mute if you aren't speaking. That would helps us all be able to hear better. Anyway, and so, when Peter and I first met, I remember your story, and you saying how your mother had actually died of complications of obesity. And that because I always look at like life-changing events. When we have a very defining life-changing event that just spearheads and launches us in a very powerful direction, that can happen. And I believe that was really something for you. And you just were so purposeful and so intentional about studying and researching anything you could get your hands on, to really get to the root, to the cause of, what had happened to your mom. And I remember when you started really finding out a lot of information, really getting in there, you going, oh my gosh, I mean, if I would have known this, it could have actually saved her life. And so I want to just say this to everyone about Peter. There are people out there that read books. Peter is an incredibly intelligent individual. When he reads a book on research, it's like he's almost got like some kind of a photographic memory that he can tell you with such incredible retention of what he's read. the facts and the data. But it's not just a book, guys. It's when he studies research, Peter has dedicated 20 years of going and following the top level. We're talking top shelf individuals of researchers, scientists, PhDs, physicians in the fields of toxicity, deficiency, obesity, and stress. Those 4 topics. And you really, from getting in there with all the information, you really narrowed it down to those 4 topics and really discovered something it came all very organic of how it unfolded, of how those 4 things are cofactors working against each other. And so when Peter researches, I just want you to keep this in mind when you're listening, that he rolls up his sleeves, he develops relationship with the researchers, he dives into their research like no one else, I don't think, on the planet that does this kind of thing. So Peter's an anomaly, and he's an incredible individual. And I remember when we had met shortly after, and people were saying, Peter, what are you thinking? What are you going to do with all of this? And I'll leave that statement to you, because I remember what you said, and I bet you remember too. You said, what are you going to do? What are you doing, Peter? You were like, I know exactly what I'm going to do.
I'm going to change the world. That's exactly what I said.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, Peter, what's the big deal? What's the big deal with fasting?
What is the big deal?
What's the big deal, man? Like everybody on the internet's talking about intermittent fasting. Should I do it? Maybe I could just go a few hours without eating after I work out really hard. That would be good. That would be cool, huh?
Well, if you were misinformed, that'd be great, and I am, and I want to tell everybody that, look, I'm not the expert, but I became an expert on the experts, like both Sandra and Nicole alluded to, and it's their research that I'm going to bring to you tonight. I didn't know any of this, but when you're taught I joke around and say I really do work with Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and Einstein on a daily basis. I'm not overstating that. The kinds of people that I work with are at the absolute cutting edge of the cutting edge of the cutting edge of what's possible. So let's start with one basic principle. And I don't expect any of you to answer because you're all on mute, but I'll share with you. The biggest problem facing mankind since the dawn of time is not coronavirus. It's obesity. I don't know if you know the most recent statistics, but in countries where obesity is a high percentage, 90% of the people dying of COVID are obese. In the United States, 78% of all hospitalizations are caused by obesity. And if you're obese and you get COVID, your complications are 3 times more negative than if you don't have it. And we just keep, the thing that's it's laughable, it's sad that people are so desperate for a solution that they keep looking at these stupid diets, including intermittent fasting, which is 2 different parts. One part, you hear about this time-restricted eating, complete hoax, by the way, based on science. So I don't eat for 16 hours and I eat for 8. That's the dumbest thing anybody could ever do. Because the basic of human beings is we want to eat over a long period of time. We don't want to just condense it into a few hours, okay? Now, here's the good news. When all of you go to sleep tonight, assuming you don't eat too late, because eating late at night is really detrimental. It interferes with what are called your circadian rhythms. I don't want to get too sciencey on you, but it basically means this, that when we eat our last meal at night, we want to have some time between that meal and when we go to sleep, because we need to suspend our digestive tract. That's really important. Once you've suspended the digestive tract, guess what happens? The body automatically turns on its own internal detox mechanism. So basically, think about it. When you're sleeping, you're fasting. But in essence, you're not in starvation because the food, and that's why, for example, if you have a shake as your last meal at night, you couldn't do anything better because your body is going to use those nutrients in that shake as you're sleeping to do what? To help rejuvenate, replenish, and also help us to get rid of the debris from dying cells. That's called autophagy, okay? But keep in mind, when we sleep, we're fasting. But let's say you have a meal at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. You're going to use up half your sleep time for your body to be breaking down the food. You're not suspending the digestive tract. So therefore, you're not turning on that detox mechanism. So let's get that out of the way right away. So that whole concept of and by the way, there was a study done by a professor at Stanford that was a huge proponent of time restricted eating, that eat for 8 hours, 16. Well, when they did the actual data, they found that it was terribly detrimental. Guess what people lost by doing that? Lean muscle mass. Guess what happened to people? They slowed their metabolism down. See, that's the thing. Like, you know, in the old days, or a lot of people, I don't think you're doing it so much now, would skip breakfast. Wait a minute. You just came off your sleep cycle when you used up all your nutrients. In the morning, you're in the desert. You're in starvation mode. You don't even know it. So then they have a cup of coffee and an English muffin and run out the house. No, no, no. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Couldn't do anything worse to yourselves. So the reason it's a shake for breakfast and a shake as your last meal at night is to supply your body while you're sleeping with the elements that allow you to repair yourself, which is really what happens when you fast, and or in the morning to replenish what you used up in your sleep cycle. Does everyone understand that? Does that make sense? Sandra, do you get that?
I do get that.
Okay, because you're going to be teaching other people this after I do this tonight, okay?
Yep.
Now, let's go to some more myths, M-Y-T-H-S. They make me nuts, crazy. Let me tell you this. You're going to find out very soon, brand new scientific studies are going to prove one thing, that any diet, any exercise, any nutrition program, whatever we thought about those was 100% wrong. As a matter of fact, the old adage of calories in, calories out was how you lose weight. Completely false. They have unequivocal evidence now. The only thing that happens on a diet is you lose lean muscle and you slow your metabolism down in the long run. That's why they don't work. I mean, I wrote a book about this 11 years ago and proved the same damn thing that they're now proving in these scientific studies. Now, let's talk about how our body works. So let's talk about a fast. You can do a water fast, a lemon fast, I don't care, whatever you want to do. Or you can do intermittent nutritional fasting or intermittent fasting that's nutritionally supported. That's really what you're doing. I know some of you are familiar with the term cleanse. This is not a cleanse. You've never cleansed. A cleanse is a colon cleanse, a liver cleanse, a kidney cleanse. That's not what this is. This is intermittent nutritional fasting. I would like you all to start to use that term now. Now, it is true that I own the trademark for it, but that's only better for me if you start referring to intermittent nutritional fasting. That helps Peter Greenlaw. But I did coin it and discover it, you know, et cetera. So let's look at both of those. So in my right hand is a fast, and my left hand is intermittent nutritional fasting. So starting at 0 in the morning, when you're maybe, you know, you're having your 4 servings a day of your drink, or on a intermittent fast, you're drinking water and lemon. Doesn't matter. They both, it's going to take about 22 hours for your body to burn through the excess sugar that's stored in our liver. That's called glycogen. At the end of that 22 hours, about, your body only has 2 things left for fuel, both on intermittent fasting or an intermittent nutritional fasting. On intermittent fasting, I can 1,000,000% guarantee you, because of scientific proof study. So my right hand is muscle and my left hand is fat. Well, guess what? On intermittent fasting, because you're out of nutrition, your body will ignore that fat and burn muscle. Proven in clinical studies. Every single diet fast, the only thing you're burning. So it's, yeah, you can even actually lose some weight, but it's bad weight that you're losing. You're losing the most important thing we have in this active lean muscle mass that allows our body to function at a much higher level, supporting our immune system, doing all kinds of wonderful things. You do not want to decrease your lean muscle, period. That's one of the big knocks on diets. They say, don't lose more than 1 pound a week on a diet. Totally agree, because what you lose, and now it's proven scientifically, is lean muscle mass, okay? Now let's come back to intermittent nutritional fasting. I'm going to introduce a brand new term to all of you tonight. So when you do your first 2 days, let's call them shake days, where you had your shake for breakfast, you had maybe a healthy lunch, a healthy dinner, and a shake as your last meal at night. What you were doing, I learned this term from one of probably the top nutritional research scientists in the entire world. So this is not my opinion. Let's get clear on that, all right? So I'm just saving you the time from getting to the point where you had to spend 18 years of research, 20 years, whatever I've done, to get someone like that to actually listen to me and then share with me their knowledge, okay? So the new term is what you're doing on those preparatory days before you start your 48 hours, you're doing what's called nutritional partitioning. New term, nutritional partitioning. What does it mean? It means that on those 2 days, you actually were stockpiling nutrients. So when you came into your detox day, when you were just maybe having your aloe vera drink and your snacks, those other things, you realize on those days, you're down to about 350 to 400 calories, okay? But because of nutritional partitioning, your body, without increasing calories, is able to access that. Think of a warehouse. You've created this warehouse. That's what nutritional partitioning means. So now you're able to access the nutrients in that warehouse on your detox day. Because watch what happens. Remember, at 22 hours, this was intermittent fast. This was intermittent nutritional fasting, okay? So guess what happens on intermittent nutritional fasting? This is muscle and this is fat. It ignores the muscle and burns the fat, proven in scientific studies. And in those fat cells where the toxins are stored. That's why I tell people all the time, a lot of people think this is a weight loss program. It is not a weight loss program. That's a side benefit. And the reason that many of you have experienced boundless energy and focus and less mental fog and sleeping better at night and incredible amounts of energy is because our bodies were meant to burn fat. I'll give you an example. In your bodies today, all of us, we store about 2,000 calories in simple sugars and carbohydrates, okay? And 90% of the people in North America are walking around in what's called metabolic inflexibility. All that means, it's a fancy term for burning sugar and carbs. So 2,000 calories. And you can see that's about a day's worth of energy, right? Because a calorie is really just, all it is an energy measurement. It's not a real thing, okay? It doesn't really exist. A calorie doesn't do anything to you. What does something to you is what's inside the damn calorie, okay? So if we took 100 calories, and this was a scale, both sides 100 calories, and but you notice on the scale, they should weigh the same, right? But the scale's like this. Why is that? Because this is a brownie, and this is a piece of salmon, both 100 calories, but look what the brownie does to you to upset. Because again, you're allowing your body to burn sugar in place of burning fat. But wait till I tell you this. Our bodies store in fat for energy 100,000 calories, 50 times more than sugar and carbs. So is it hard to believe what your body's supposed to do? It's supposed to burn fat. So what happens on this in that first 24 hours, if you're fasting or you're doing an extreme diet, when you get to that point, like I said, the body ignores the fat and burns the muscle. You do not want that to happen. You need to switch over. It's called fat adaptive. It's a fancy word, simply meaning that you're burning fat, or a better way to explain it. So I told you about metabolic inflexibility, meaning you're 90% of the people burning sugar and simple carbs. But starting at 22 hours on intermittent nutritional fasting, when your body ignores the muscle and burns that fat, now you're in metabolic flexibility, which means you're now burning fat. That's why, for example, I was getting in trouble for this, I would never, ever, ever let anyone do 24-hour detox. It's interesting, but you're getting 10% of the value. The magic happens at about 22, 23 hours when your body goes from metabolic inflexibility to metabolic flexibility. See, the fast, the time release eating, all those things, they just don't work. As a matter of fact, in this study on the time, on intermittent fasting, time restricted, after 12 weeks, the average weight loss after 12 weeks was 6 pounds. That's a joke. My late brother coined the term, just give us 4 days, because as you probably know, a lot of you have lost that much weight in 4 days, not in 12 weeks. And they say that's good because you see, they just don't know. They don't know about this. So what they're doing is it's like they keep taking this round peg with a hammer and they're smashing it, trying to get it in the square hole. It doesn't fit. It won't fit. It can't fit. Because you're working against our own metabolism. So you've got to be able, so what really happens on that detox day? Well, over the course of that 22 hours, it's not just that you're burning through the sugar, but you've basically suspended your digestive tract. Once you suspend that digestive tract, now it's going to go after fat. That's why, for example, on a detox day, it wouldn't take much. A bite of an English muffin. Oh, geez, I think I'll just have a bite of an apple or something. Well, you all but would stop your detox, okay? Now, I know I get in trouble with this because there's lots of options. I know there are chocolates and all these kind of things. I'm a purist. There are only 6 things that you should be putting. The snacks were designed specifically in the beginning to do what? Balance blood sugar. They're not appetite suppression. They're appetite support. Completely different philosophy. When I started, there was no such thing as any of those other gimmicks. Now, I do like the bone broth. That's again, it helps us get into fat adaptation. So the only 2 things I add to the, your shake, your snack, your little, I call it the super vitamin, and the detox drink is the ionics and or bone broth. Those are the 6 things that I recommend. I think probably Sandra and Sandy have, Nicole, I'm sorry, have been using those as part of the program. As a matter of fact, there's a shameless plug for me, I guess, but in your back office is actually something called the Race to Maintenance, which includes the 4 elements, and then you have to add the ionics and the bone broth. If you want to, do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm just telling you, if you want, I mean, I always tell people this: do you want good results, better results, best results, or would you like extraordinary results? And are you willing to do what's necessary to make that happen? I'm sorry, but 24 hours at a minimum. But let me tell you another part about why intermittent nutritional fasting is so important. Because at the 22-hour mark, well, I'll share something with you. I think that Nicole and Sandra know this, but I've done a lot of work with addicts. But in particular, let's talk about alcoholics, okay? So an alcoholic, if you want to go to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, you have to be alcohol-free for 48 hours. But what's interesting about that Harvard Medical School now has proven this, that essentially what happens, if all you know, when you stop drinking, if say an alcoholic, they stop drinking, it takes about 6 or 8 hours for the alcohol to leave their body. But ladies and gentlemen, what's the main component of alcohol? Sugar, okay? So what happens and now there's a new term. You all can use this or not use it. It's up to you. I don't care. But I'll share it with you. This is from Harvard Medical School. We now have a new condition in our brain that has to do with addiction of any kind, and it's called dopamine resistance. You've all heard of insulin resistance for a diabetic. Well, the reason they call it dopamine resistance is in our brain, the brain, when something pleasurable happens, or we eat, a piece of cheesecake or ice cream or whatever, it's pleasurable. Otherwise, we'd starve to death. That's how smart nature is, okay? So in the brain, it produces this. It's called a neurotransmitter. And this hand here would be like a plug in the wall. And this is the chemical, dopamine, goes into that site, and we feel really good. So the chemical has to go into the site, right? Well, what happens in addiction, and we have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of these sites in our brain. But what they now know, Harvard proved this, in addiction, those sites, because of the overstimulation of whatever it is, whether it's cocaine or heroin or methamphetamines or marijuana or alcohol, the body just can't operate at that crazy manic level. So what does it do? It begins to shut down those sites and thus makes those receptors resistant. Does that make sense? Everyone get that? Okay. So what did Harvard prove? Harvard proved that, for example, sugar, you ready for this, everyone? Is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. So what really is happening to you in the first 24 hours of intermittent nutritional fasting or fasting, but you've got to understand at the end, the problem, the body won't burn that sugar, won't burn that fat if you're in a degraded state. So those sites will remain closed. You need that second 24 hours as you burn through the sugar. We just talked about that, right? Guess what happens with those sites? They begin to become a little bit more tolerant. So when you have that shake after that 48 hours, that's why it probably tastes better than anything you ever had in your life, because the very little bit of sugar that's left, because I know at least I hope you're all incubating the shake in the warm water and letting it sit for 45 minutes, and 30 to 40% of all the sugar is gone. Okay. So now imagine your brain is going, wow, I'm completely satisfied. I didn't need to overstimulate those dopamine sites. And what happens? That's why your cravings begin to go down as you do this. That's why we call it the race to maintenance. And that's why a huge part of this is getting you to get over your addiction to coffee or Red Bull or sugar or pancakes or chocolate, whatever it is. Okay. So this is why it's such a tremendous benefit, intermittent nutritional fasting versus intermittent fasting. Because at the end of that 24 hours, you've gone through all this work, you're doing intermittent fasting, and then your body's starving. You've got to eat. And the minute you eat, you're going to have carbohydrates and simple carbs. And those sites are never going to become sensitized again. And so the addiction continues. I mean, my goodness, how do you think people get to weigh 600 pounds? 400, 500. You see it all the time. They might, you got to understand that sugar is more addictive than cocaine. And we wonder why willpower doesn't work. Have any of you ever tried willpower? How the hell does that work? It doesn't. Eventually you can't stand it anymore. You break. But when you're really, what's really doing with this, we're rehabilitating our bodies. We're allowing our bodies to be in metabolic flexibility most of the time. It doesn't mean you can't have a cupcake or an ice cream cone, of course. But at least during your first, at least 30 days, the more you limit those simple carbs and sugars, the better off you're going to be, because you got to understand, you're going through withdrawal. You're allowing your brain, you're allowing those dopamine receptor sites to now become receptive. And look, the science proves it. Fasting, time-restricted eating, paleo, meditation, none of those work. There's not one shred of clinical evidence that they work. What there is clinical evidence of, the one thing you're guaranteed, yeah, you'll lose some weight, but it's bad weight because you're decreasing your lean, your active muscle mass. That is a really bad thing. And as a result, you slow your metabolism down. And that is a hell of a hard thing to re-engage that. That's why this works. That's why this is so unique. That's why there's nothing else on the planet like this. And this researcher that I'm working with, he basically told me just the other day, he said, this is the solution. Exactly what I've taught Sandra and Nicole, and hopefully they're teaching you. Not because Peter Greenlaw says so. I'm telling you that the evidence supports it. And when these new clinical studies come out, probably in the next couple of months, it's going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind. Because the research now for 35 years, name a diet, they analyzed. Paleo, Mediterranean, keto, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, heart healthy diet, didn't matter. At the end of the day, they all ended up in exactly the same place. Lowered lean muscle mass and a slowed down metabolism. Oh, and by the way, also people did lose water on conventional diets. On what you're doing, people did not lose, even though we hear that. Oh my gosh, I heard it's unsafe to lose that much weight that fast, and it must be water weight. No, no, no. The evidence will prove it's not water weight. The evidence will prove that not only are you not decreasing your lean muscle mass, you're actually increasing it. And that is the roadmap to having an incredibly successful life. The biggest thing we fight, I feel, is, and I don't want anyone to get upset, but it's really ignorance and apathy, only that people don't know. And the biggest mistake they make, they think they know. Because then they'll tell you, you might explain a little bit about what you're doing and say, oh, well, I do shakes and, I've done that before and, I'll just exercise and eat healthy. No, you won't. There's no such thing as that anymore. If you try, now here's the thing. I gave you the secret. You need to lower the calories enough to suspend the digestive tract. But if you tried to do this with regular food that's nutritionally bankrupt, guess what your body would do? Goes into starvation mode. And I promise you, in starvation mode, you cannot burn fat, period. It's that simple, period. You can't. So the idea here is that our main problem with our food, even when it's organic, I hope everyone will agree with this. You don't have to, but the research proves it, that our food has become calorie dense and nutritionally bankrupt. So that's why if you see, and that's the problem, like you do a regular fast, you're already coming into the fast with a deficit from the food you ate the day before you started. You're not going to have any nutritional partitioning if you're using regular food. I mean, where would you get the 70 minerals? Where would you get 90% absorption of amino acids? You wouldn't. That's the point. So the game changer is the difference between food that's what? Calorie dense and nutritionally bankrupt with what you're doing. You're ingesting food, that's what it is, that is nutritionally dense and calorically bankrupt. So when you go on a detox day and get those calories down, just as a measurement of calorie, to about 350, your body, your digestive tract relaxes. Also, look at what you're consuming based on a detox day, primarily liquid. Your digestive tract doesn't have to do very much to process the aloe vera drink or even a little snack. It's just so nutrient dense. It's what you want to guard against. You got to keep those calories low enough that you go above that line, the body won't detox. That's why, again, I gave you the example when we're sleeping. You need that time to process the food from the time you have dinner or supper, whatever you guys say in Canada, whatever, I don't know, but that's okay. And that difference of time allows your body to basically process the food. So when you go to sleep, you're not digesting almost anything at all. That turns on the detox mechanism and you replenish, you rejuvenate, and you basically rebuild your body. It's the only time that a human being produces human growth hormone is when we sleep, not when we're awake. So I don't know if there's any guys on this call, and I wouldn't care anyway, but these men that are running around getting the HG, human growth hormone injections. The problem is the minute you inject that in your body, you stop making it. But your body is capable of making it when you're sleeping. So you can understand now, if you have one of those shakes before you go to bed at night, you're supplying your body with the elements that can make even more human growth hormone. You see, one other thing I want to say, this is kind of an aside, but not. I want you all to understand the significance that in your shake, it has 8 grams of prebiotic fiber. I want to clarify that, not probiotics. I'm not opposed to probiotics, but what does a prebiotic do? A prebiotic allows your gut to colonize the good bacteria. In other words, to make more of it. And anytime our body can make more of something, instead of us taking it as a supplement, you're light years ahead. So that's another thing that you have going for you. But I hope that I made that clear enough now, Sandra and Nicole, that there's an enormous difference between intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating, and what all of you are doing, which is intermittent nutritional fasting. You're not doing a cleanse. I go nuts when people use. I'm going, what are you talking about? I don't know what's a. Are you doing a colon cleanse? You're going to be in the bathroom all day? I mean, no, that's not what we're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
And the great thing is we have the science to back us up. So
No,
do
I
you
think
two
that
have any additional questions for me, or I'm more than happy to take questions from the audience. I can't believe I did that as in such a short period of time.
you did incredible. And what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next question, Nicole?
I'm curious about detoxing and toxins in the body,
Okay.
because we're effectively addressing the toxins in a intermittent nutritional fast, that second day.
That's correct.
We're really going deeper into the body.
Well, okay, so let me get real technical. So let's talk about a fat cell. There are 2 different kinds of fat. The outer layer of fat on all of our bodies, that's called adipose tissue. That's kind of the jiggly, the soft fat. But when you press down and you hear that really hard fat underneath, that's called visceral fat. It's around all the organs. And ironically, for whatever reason, when a toxin enters the body, the body stores it inside the visceral fat primarily. But it's more than that. It actually, what causes the sort of plumpiness of a fat cell are what are called the fatty acids that are contained within inside the fat cell. And technically what happens on the detox is you literally are removing the fatty acids in which the toxins are stored. So basically what happens is the fat cells literally shrink away because you took the air out of them. Essentially, that's what happens. But I will tell you this, that's another reason why we're so insistent. If you're not, you need to be not just weighing on a scale. You need to be using the tape measure, because I tell people the scale is for vanity and the measurement is for science. The science, those inches are going down because you literally are shrinking away the repository of the toxic chemicals. Again, proven in clinical studies. This is clearly removing toxins from the body, not up for debate. As we also know, it's lowering inflammation, which makes sense because if you have less toxins, you're gonna have less inflammation. I mean, it just all makes sense, okay?
Yeah.
So, but the removal of the toxin is dependent on the body being able to really, eviscerate those fatty acids inside those fat cells. That's a good way to think about it. That's basically, but see, that's what doesn't happen on a fast, because now you're in starvation mode and your body won't burn fat in starvation mode. End of the story.
So
We
interesting.
know
Well,
that
we have on such a track, especially since Sandra was introduced to you, and we started working together a couple of years ago. Sandra has done such a fantastic job, and so many of the people in the community here, of doing the consistent, not just once in a while, not when we think we've been binging too much, doing those 2 days of fast, but every single week, the consistent. I mean, look at her and look at so many of the people. If you just looked around and looked at the camera here, so many people, Peter.
I'm so,
I mean,
it's really, really rewarding to me to think that, I've spent a great part of my life doing this research, and then that people are able to use it and transform their lives. That back to what was my original goal, to change the world. And I know that I'm making an impact. Because this knowledge, which isn't my knowledge, okay? But this knowledge, I really believe if you've had an incredible response, if you've had an incredible result, I feel it's like an obligation that we share it with people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Not to convince them.
So what would you say about the consistent 2 day, and then the next, like the 2 day, that rhythm of 2 days intermittent nutritional fasting per week, just as a lifestyle? Can you talk
I would say,
some of the benefits of that?
I would say a couple of things. I think initially that everyone needs to do a minimum of 30 to 60 days of that. So for 2 days every week for a month or two. And then I have lots of people that, like they are doing 2 days every week, and they've been doing it for 8 or 10 years. But for some people that maybe want to take it a little bit easier, if they wanted to go every 2 weeks, so they wanted to go every 3, not more than a month, not more than 4 weeks. You want to be at least doing one intermittent nutritional fast, the 48 hours, at least once a month. I mean, if you want to do it every week, of course, that's even better, because think of it this way: toxins don't go on vacation. They're attacked.
That's what we do in this environment. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I just wanted you to speak to that. Why is that so like the best that you can get, that you can do for yourself?
Well, because again, no, I don't want to make anybody mad, but it looks like, none of you are teenagers on this call. Maybe there are, I don't see any.
Hey now, come on.
Okay, I know I was going to make everybody mad. I always do that. That's part of my job. But think about it. So if you're 30 or 40 years old, you've been accumulating toxins for 30 or 40 years. You're not going to get rid of them in a week or a month. That's when people make me nuts when they ask me, do I have to do this the rest of my life? And I know I've shared that with you before. I tell people all the time, look, you have no idea before they start this. You have no idea how bad you feel until you realize how good you can feel. So why would you want to go back to the way you felt in the beginning when you did this in the first place? Because if you go back to what you were doing before, you're going to turn yourself back into whatever you were when you first started this. So think of it, the detox is really like going to the dentist and getting your teeth cleaned with, professionally. And then in between, you're really flossing and brushing your teeth. But, I would say that if you did 48 hours every week, you still probably aren't going to get completely detoxed in a whole lifetime, because the toxins had such a head start on us. But you can minimize the negative impact of them, let alone, the new wardrobe you have to buy, and you're skinny and you feel great and you have energy and mental clarity. I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I think it was a nice compliment you played me, Nicole, but I really believe that this nourishment has played an enormous part in allowing my own sort of brain to open up, to be able to absorb all of this information, and to be able to, basically, I'm like I hit the button and out comes the information. I mean, I don't have any notes here. I'm just doing this extraneous. It's like I'm a cappella knowledge, that's it.
Well, isn't it true, Peter, that the longer the toxins are in the body, the deeper they go, and the more the deeper and the longer that they're there, the more havoc that they cause with our health?
Yeah, because what happens is the body, well, the first thing that happens is we fill up our liver. Many of you may be familiar with the term fatty liver disease. It's one of the fastest growing diseases among results. So in the liver itself, there shouldn't be any fat in there at all. So what's happening, the liver again is trying to protect itself from these. The only protection we have against these chemicals is for the body to take them and stuff them inside a fat cell. So now the liver becomes, sort of impregnated with fat. Well, once that happens, the next time a toxin goes, the liver says, I don't want any part of this, and farms it out to the body. So that's why we see it normally around the abdomen, the waist, the stomach, those kind of things, and the thighs and things like that. So again, the body is sort of, it's dispersing this throughout our body, these chemicals. And that's why, it takes longer and longer and longer to get to those, far regions of the body, including our brain. And I mean, it's just this stuff is, I have a new thing now, and I haven't shared this with either one of you, but, and this is a real, I think, an incredible analogy. Do you know, for years, cigarette smoking didn't cause lung cancer until it did, because it took a certain amount of time to be smoking to do the damage that allowed the carcinogens to, be affecting the lungs, right? I think we're going to find the exact same thing with toxins. You have to understand that we never knew that the body was storing a toxin in it until late 2005, 2006. But yet we've been accumulating these toxins for years and years and years. And I think you're going to see much, much more of a relationship between toxins and disease. I really believe that. That's why I believe more and more people, that's why I think the opportunity is so staggering, because I just can't, everyone in the world has the TDOS syndrome, toxicity, deficiency, overweight, and stress. And if you do nothing about it, probably nothing good is going to happen, right? We know we're storing this stuff in our bodies, okay? And if you can begin to assist your own body in removing it, it's real simple. Your body's going to work better. That's how and why this works. And depending, if you want to do it every week, you're probably going to live an incredible life. And one other thing I want to share with you, and maybe I did before. So a lot of the researchers now are coming out with COVID, whether you get vaccinated or not, doesn't matter. Let's say COVID didn't exist. The most important thing we could ever do as a human being, whether it was COVID or not, is to boost our immune system, okay? So I'm going to give you all a scientific chemistry lesson here. So in our cell, if this is a cell where I'm holding my fingers, in the cell's capable of making this really powerful molecule that supports or boosts the immune system. It's called glutathione. And that glutathione can only be made with 3 of the 20 amino acids, which you're ingesting when you, any protein, but certainly with our shakes, okay? So imagine when you incubate that shake in the warm water, let it sit, you go from absorption of all 20 amino acids from 15% to 90%. Now, I don't think you have to be a mathematician to figure out if you're giving your cells 90% of those 3 aminos, which are called cysteine, glutamate, and glycine. You don't have to write this down. You can even Google it. They're saying that one of the greatest things you could ever do to boost your immune system is ingest whey protein. But of course, they don't know about what we know about incubating the shake. So the science, they have nothing to do with the company. They're just saying whey protein in general. But now when you understand that you incubate that shake and you get 90% of all 20 amino acids, but those 3 in particular, what do you think that's going to do to boost your immune system? And if boosting our immune system is not an everyday strategy, 24/7, 365 days a year, I don't know what would be better than that. So there's all these like hidden gems. And you got to understand that, the man that invented this knew nothing about making this in the warm water and letting it sit. Even today on your label, it'll tell you drink, you know, and I get in trouble all the time when I even talk about this, but I'm just a scientist. And I say, look, for 15 years, I made the shakes in cold water. You can certainly do it. And I drank it in 5 minutes. But it would really be pretty selfish on my part if I didn't say independently, my colleague, who I wrote, in case you don't know, this is my most famous book, Your Third Brain, not a trick title. I know Sandra has it. And he is one of the greatest oncologists in the world and molecular biologist. And he did the analysis of our shakes and 19 other shakes. He tested them all in cold water. Some of them registered an absorption out of 100. They were 5% out of 100. Ours was the highest in cold water at 15%. But then he made them all in the warm water, mixed them, took the lids off, let them sit for 45 minutes and retested. 19 out of 20 shakes, whatever the number was, if it was 5 or 8 or 10, there were a couple at 12. It didn't change, except our shake. Our shake went from 15% to 90% absorption. Why? They all were made in warm water. They all sat for 45 minutes. What was the difference? The difference are the 5 enzymes that you'll see in our shake that are in no other shake. They're called proteases. And how did my colleague, the one I wrote this book with, how did he know that? Because he'd worked with a gentleman in England by the name of Sir John Vane, who won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1983 for his work on these enzymes. And he knew that they only responded to time and temperature. And that's why we have incubation today, because of his research.
Just so mind-blowing. It's
I
just
know.
mind-blowing. Like I don't so
Well,
yeah.
I mean, you know, I just, when he first told me he did that, I said, what, are you crazy? He said, no, let me tell you now. You know, he has this Italian accent and whatever, but he has nothing to do with the company. He wasn't sanctioned by the company. And honestly, I would never tell anyone not to drink a shake in 5 minutes. Go for it. I'm just telling you what the science that he determined independently. Another thing you need to know after the 45 minutes, all the whey protein, all the casein protein, all the milk protein is almost totally eliminated. And the sugar is reduced by 30 to 40% after the 45 minutes, which, and you know, after the 45 minutes, you can add ice, remix it. You can make it tonight, let it sit for 45 minutes, remix it, put it in the refrigerator and drink it in the morning. Yep. Or not, or make it in cold water. Look, I did it for 15 years in cold water and I saw it incredible, but I've never seen results, the kind of results that we're having now. Yep. Never. I've never seen anything like this.
I would agree.
Since we've been incubating the shakes. And there were lots of people that couldn't digest the shake. They'd get bloating, they'd get upset stomach, they'd have gas, whatever it was. Well, wow, isn't it amazing? You incubate the shake and all of a sudden you don't have any problem at all. So that's all I know.
Yeah, well, it's so true. It's happening time and time and time again with everybody that we're coaching that are intolerant or celiac or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I would say this, look, nothing's 100%. And if you're really sensitive to either whey or casein or whatever it is, then, you know, try the shake that way, you know, maybe take a couple sips, wait about 30 minutes. If you don't have a reaction, you're not going to have a reaction. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people that couldn't digest the shakes. Yeah. Maybe they had a casein allergy or a whey or dairy allergy. It didn't matter, you know. But it's you know, the cool thing is it's just science. Yeah. And like I said, he has no dog in this hunt. He has nothing to do with the company. Mm-hmm. The only reason he did the analysis was for his cancer patients, because he was giving them a whey protein from Switzerland and it was one of the ones he tested, by the way. Its absorption was only 12% because it didn't have these enzymes. Yeah. So that is a game changer. And I would just say that for all of us, I feel it's a privilege that we get to do this, that we know about it. Do we know, how many of you know friends, family, relatives, people you go to church with that are suffering in quiet desperation? They don't want to be the way they are, but they accept it because they don't know what else to do. Does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely.
Nicole, Sandra, does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
So any other questions? I'm all ears. I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So if anybody wants to ask me a question.
Okay, so we're going to be here for 3 more hours. Just saying, just so buckle up.
Oh, I see that. What about the ice cream bars? No. I mean, you can have them, but they don't do what this. The only way this happens is by incubating the shake in the warm water, letting it sit for 45 minutes. Okay.
Yep.
I'm not opposed to the bars, but if you go into the gym, I'm going to give you all a tremendous secret. If you're going to the gym, you want the secret of your life. Incubate your shake or take it to the gym in the warm water, let it sit for 45 minutes. You drink that within 5 minutes after your workout, you'll think you're on steroids. Why? Because our cell, after you work out, your cells, your muscles are screaming for what? The amino acids, which are necessary to rebuild our muscles. No bar, no energy drink, no power bar, nothing would come close to, but you want to drink it within 5 minutes after your workout. As a matter of fact, I have a lot of athletes that actually on the treadmill, as they're cooling down, you don't even have to wait until your workout's over. You can actually cool down with it if you want.
Okay,
But
so can we pause on the athlete thing?
sure.
So we did have a question come in about a high level athlete, and I think you've worked with athletes, have you not?
Oh my gosh, yes. Name them.
Okay, so
Athletes, triathletes, marathoners, ultra marathoners.
what about intermittent nutritional fasting for an athlete that trains 6 days a week? Could they do a 48-hour fast while they're
They really need to, because it will increase. Number one, it will greatly reduce the amount of lactic acid they actually produce when they're working out. The only thing I would tell them is on those 48-hour days, I would want them at least initially the first time or two to do about half the intensity and half the time, because it takes tremendous amounts of energy for the body to detox. Okay. But keep in mind, if they're putting those shakes in them on the other days, it's going to, because of the nutritional partitioning that I talked about, it's going to make more than make up for the deficit, on those days. I mean, and I think I shared this before. So I'm a name dropper, but it's true. It ain't bragging if you can back it up, right? So one of my dear friends is Mark Jenkins, who's Beyonce's personal trainer.
Yep.
So he was very skeptical. He says, look, I can get any shake in the world. I said, look, okay, well, prove me wrong. He said, okay, I'll do this. And he had a photo shoot with Armour, which is the famous sportswear line for men and stuff like that. He started at 12% body fat on day one. I put him on, our routine. After 11 days, he went from 12, if the athlete's listening, from 12% body fat to 5% body fat and gained 5 pounds of lean muscle in 11 days.
Now how do you do that?
Because you're producing tremendous amounts, or you're accessing tremendous amounts of the one amino acid that builds muscle called leucine. So again, when you incubate, see, there was nothing he was ingesting that was giving him 90% of the amino acids, but that one amino, leucine, is what builds muscle. That's why you see so many people lose all this weight and they basically have no loose skin. And see, a pound of fat and a pound of muscle weigh exactly the same, but fat takes up 10 times the volume. So literally what's happening when you're detoxing, think of it this way. As the fat shrinks away, in a sense, it's making more room in the body for muscle mass. And obviously that lean muscle mass will also support the tissues in the skin. So you don't have all that saggy skin. And I've worked with people that weigh, I think that Nicole knows that. I worked with a guy in Denver that weighed 587 pounds, almost 600 pounds. And in 20 months, he lost 387 pounds and essentially no loose skin, no surgery of any kind. Jeez. He's still a little bit of loose skin, but my God, he weighed almost 600 pounds when he started.
Yeah.
So obviously I tell people all the time, you're not going to go to your local grocery store, to the farmer's market, and you're going to buy food like this. It doesn't exist, because you need those 70 minerals. You need those enzymes, and you need the elements that make this up, support or make up for what is not in our food. It's that simple. So it's nutritionally dense and calorically bankrupt. And that's exactly why it works.
100%.
Wow.
So we don't claim to treat, heal, cure, or diagnose any medical condition.
Nope.
We have a lot of medical questions come in, like what about diabetes? What about cancer? Now,
All right, well, let's address diabetes first.
I was just going to say, can we address diabetes?
Yeah, we can, because here's the thing, okay?
Yeah.
I've worked with probably more than 10,000 diabetics over the course of the last 20 years. But what you also need to know, the man that invented it is a type 2 diabetic on an insulin pump. And for example, the snacks, that's why I tell people those are not optional. They were specifically designed because he was a diabetic to help balance his blood sugar. So number one, he didn't have a crash in blood sugar, or more importantly, he didn't create an insulin spike. Right. So a diabetic, whether they're type 1 or type 2, but it makes sense. Okay, so a diabetic has what? They have problem processing sugar, which is either in type 1, they don't produce enough insulin, or in type 2, their insulin becomes inefficient. Its job, insulin, is to carry the sugar to the cells. Well, when you become insulin resistant, it's like, imagine a dump truck, instead of getting to the place where it's dumping it, it dumps it in the middle of the road. So that's why we get high blood sugar, because the insulin is not able to carry the sugar into the cell, so it dumps it in the blood. So again, if you're doing intermittent nutritional fasting, I already told you we're massively getting rid of sugar in that first 48 hours. Now, at type 1, you're always going to need insulin. But what you might find is, with the help of your doctor monitoring, I've seen diabetics type 1, only with the help of their doctor, reduce their insulin sometimes in 30 days by 50%. 50%. I've seen type 2s, with the help of their doctors, completely get off of all medication. I mean, that's just, I'm not saying that would or could, but and we always want your doctor to monitor you, because we're not doctors. This is not in place of, but wouldn't that be, even if you could reduce the amount of medication they have, that's a tremendous win. Okay, let's talk about cancer. None of what we do is in place of, a substitute for regular medical advice. But again, I just come back to this one simple principle. If you can boost your own immune system, I don't care whether it's the flu, I don't care if it's cancer, I don't care what it is, you're just simply allowing your body to do everything possible to assist you in conjunction with chemo or radiation or whatever you're doing. Because the worst thing that can, this I learned from my colleague, who's one of the top oncologists in the world. He said the worst thing that can ever happen to a cancer patient is they lose weight. And my younger brother, and I think I shared that with both of you before, he died of kidney cancer. From diagnosis to death was 8 months. He was 6'4". When he died, he weighed 120 pounds. I could literally carry him in my arms. He literally wasted away. I didn't know any of this 11 years ago. So as far as cancer goes, it just is a good strategy, because here's the problem with a cancer patient. They can't, to get enough protein, to get enough amino acids, they can't eat 3. My brother couldn't eat 3 chicken breasts. Why was Dr. Ruggiero using this whey protein from Switzerland with his cancer patients? Because they could get enough amino acids. They could down the shake, but they couldn't eat 3, steaks or chicken or whatever they need to do. So it's not against medical advice, just saying, why wouldn't that be a good strategy to give the body everything possible to make it work in its most efficient way, especially our immune system? Okay, what else?
There was a visceral fat question. So once it moves from the visceral fat
out into, then it passes out to the kidneys and the liver.
But does it become adipose? Like, does it become the hard fat? Does it turn into a soft fat before it's getting passed through?
No, what you're losing is inside the fat cell are those what are called the fatty acids. So that's like the air inside the fat cell, even when it's visceral fat. Okay. Yeah. So the fat literally begins to shrink. So you're shrinking, but you got to remove those fatty acids in which the toxins are stored. Remember, not every fat cell in your body is storing toxins, but the fat cells that are storing them, that's how it works. According to the researchers, that's what they taught me. Because they used to say, well, it's removing fat from the body. That's not really true. It's removing what's inside the fat, which are those fatty acids. That's where the toxins are stored. So as the fatty acid goes out, it takes the toxin with us. And this has been measured in stool samples, in urine, but primarily they're passing out to the kidneys and the liver.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. So good. So my next question is, do you remember the day you and I became best friends?
It was the day I taught you to incubate the shakes.
It was the day you told me that not some of the time, Sandra, all of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was with the intermittent nutritional fast. And I was like, okay, because you were just like, you spoke exactly how you speak today. And you speak, you don't speak like to us, but you're speaking for us, and you're speaking in.
I'm one of you. That's why they call me the researcher of the researchers. It's not, it's not my research. I just am able to interpret it and then convey it back to all of you, so that hopefully you can understand it and be able to use it to do what? To maximize your quality of life potential. See, I don't like the term health and wellness. It's so I don't even know what it means anymore. Okay. Yeah. But quality of life potential, I think everybody can relate to that. Whether it's someone that has a challenging disease, or someone maybe that's 80 years old that doesn't really want to have to use a walker if they don't need to. You know what I'm saying? That's quality of life.
Yeah. But so since you and I had that conversation, I have been intermittent nutritional fasting every week, Mondays and Tuesdays, since August of 2019, and I haven't skipped a beat yet.
And
So just,
how good do you feel?
well, I feel pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I can say I have definitely maximized my quality of life potential in a way that is almost hard to believe, and that's how I have become a really great advisor on following Tito's protocols and strategies. And super grateful for this information. And you know what? That not, I mean, somebody else can come on here and talk about this information, but we may not retain it. It's just you have a way about you. And
Thank you.
I think I've like totally imprinted on you and I stalked you. And so you know what we're doing. You know what Nicole and I are doing. And
Absolutely. And
we're
I
really
one,
helping you.
that's why I agreed to come on. I 1,000,000% endorse it. And, it's like the knowledge doesn't do the world any good if I just keep it in my head,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I know a lot of things that I've learned from these incredible people. And I just feel that it's, and look, and I know you both are doing this. You're teaching people just the basics. You want to incubate the shake. You want to understand now why it is intermittent nutritional fasting, not intermittent fasting, why time restricted intermittent fasting doesn't work. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I mean, people can lose weight, but that's the wrong kind of weight. They're losing lean muscle mass, not up for debate. That's what's happening.
Yep.
So it really becomes, I think, important. And I've always said, I can't change the world by myself. I mean, if you think about it, nothing great ever happened in the world but one person. I mean, for those of you who believe, even Jesus Christ needed 12 apostles. So I don't think I can do it alone. All right. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Well, we're all I think everybody that is on this call are gonna definitely move forward and have the ripple effect. And it's like we're all gonna talk about Tito's in a different way, and we're all gonna keep sharing and helping as many people as we can have those.
Well, like I said, I'm glad we could record this so that you
Yeah.
can use it as a tool for other people. And everyone has to understand, don't go out there. We're not curing or treating or curing or diagnosing any diseases. All we're doing is we're helping our own bodies by giving it these massive amounts of nutrition in very few calories to make up for the deficit in food.
Absolutely.
Now, if that's not a good strategy, I don't know what a better one would be, whether you have medical challenges or you just want more energy, you want to sleep better at night, you want to lower your stress, or you want to feel better. I mean, it's that simple, And I'm delighted that you had me, and I hope that this is, going to be valuable for not just the people on this call, but for the people that they're going to talk to, because again, I think the world needs this information. Another shameless plug for me. I own a trademark, another one, and I hope you'll all join me in this. So my movement is really called The New Health Conversation. That's my movement, because I certainly think we need one, because what we're doing is not working, certainly not in the long run. So the new health conversation is literally what I shared with you tonight. So anyway, that's my parting shot.
It's incredible. And just for the record, because we paused the recording, can we just quickly get you to cover juicing and how juicing is not
Yeah. Okay. So basically, as I said, in order to get your body to detox, you have to burn off the sugar stored in your body, which is called glycogen. Okay. So it takes about 22 hours, whether you're intermittent fasting, you're fasting. So again, if you're doing a juice fast, the juice has high levels of sugar.
Right.
It's really simple. You're never going to get your body to detox when there's sugar present.
Right.
It's just how the body works. It's not something we have to make up. So a juice fast cannot produce these kind of results, because you're never going to get the fat burning if sugar's present. It's that simple.
Yeah.
That's the answer. It's that simple. So don't think you can do a juice fast and you're fasting, because you're not. Okay.
Yep.
So I think that was a short explanation of what we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this just came in, and someone said, what would be your opening statement when you're talking to somebody about these new nutritional strategies?
Well, before I even get to that, let's just say that it was you, Sandra, and I hadn't seen you in a while, and I came up and I said, Well, first of all, I'd always say, oh, Sandra, so nice to see you. How are you doing? And then obviously you're going to ask me back, how am I doing? I said, well, gosh, Sandra, I discovered that I had this syndrome that I didn't realize every person in the world has, called the TDOS syndrome. And since I've discovered it, it's totally changed my life. That's my opening conversation. It's always around TDOS syndrome, because people, I'm telling you, they want to know, what is it? I've never heard of that, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell people, don't do this. It's so much more. The main reason to do this is to combat the TDOS syndrome.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's what I open with. So I don't talk about, I'm with a nutritional company, or I show people how to lose weight. No.
Can I add to that?
That's Marie Osmond does that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't look good in a black dress anyway. So
Can I add to that?
yeah, go ahead, add.
You know how we're out and about, and
Yes.
I tend to have a lot of conversations in the grocery stores.
Sure.
And you always ask somebody, how are they feeling or how are they doing? And they typically will share how they are doing and how
Right.
they feel and whatnot and their struggles.
Right.
So I just say, well, you have TDOS.
Yep.
And then of course it's like, well, what is TDOS? I'm like, how about you come on to our TDOS Tuesday talk and we'll
Perfect.
tell you all
There
about
you
it.
go.
So for those of you that are on this call and you're like, well, how do I segue? How do I get out of
Simple.
the old strategy of like that whole marketing stuff and get into TDOS? It's like, this can be your segue to invite people in. So you don't have to be the expert like Peter or like myself or like Nicole or Amber or Tracy. You want to be able to just be the traffic
Yep.
controller and say, there's this environment that we talk about it every Tuesday
And
night.
just say, look, I'm so new to it, I really can't explain it, but this is an incredible call on
Yeah.
Tuesday night. I'm going to invite you on and they'll explain it, because
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
That's what no more. Don't go in any more detail. That is a big mistake.
Yeah, that's our tool. That's what we do. Say you
Cool.
have TDOS and you're going to come on to our call Tuesday night.
Well, it sure looks like it's working.
It is. And then I have this best friend and his name is Peter. And every once in a while he'll come on and talk to us.
Well, it was my pleasure. I'm happy to see the ones that I can see, and
Yeah.
those of you that are hiding, it's okay. I promise I wasn't going to call on you, so don't worry. But like I said, I really hope that this information can really make a difference, that everyone will feel like maybe they have a little more confidence now, that they want to share this, that it's really based on real science. And I will say again, there is nothing like this in the world, period.
Mhm.
You got to understand that there is nothing else like this. This is the solution for the world we live in today, period.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you are a delight and I could just carry you around in my back pocket forever. But thank you so much. And we
Sure.
will have you on for more. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so if
Yep.
you have something really cool that's coming up in the pipeline that's new and
I'm always working on new stuff. I'm always
That's
going down the
awesome.
rabbit hole, but
Okay, I know. Yeah.
I can't help myself. So,
Yeah.
but anyway,
we'll
so
definitely have you on
good
more.
night, everyone. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
week. I'm happy that I was able to,
Yeah.
impart some of my knowledge that's stored inside this coconut,
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for
Much,
joining
Peter.
me.
All right.
And
Good night,
let
everybody.
the mission move forward. We're all
Absolutely.
marching together.
Yep. Good night, everyone.
Thank
Thank you.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Peter.